Welcome, travelers, to my realm of nightmares. Allow me to be your personal assistant. Come in, take a seat, get comfortable. For when you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.
A note from the author. This story is one I've wanted to write for a while now, but the words have always escaped me. For one, it's true. I know. Every story is true. Haha, very scary. This one, however, is as true as it gets. And as everyone knows, writing a series of incredible events while maintaining credibility is damn near impossible. I do invite and even encourage you to look it up on Google after it's finished. The second reason I found it difficult, it's two stories in one. There's a whole lot of history involved, and though the details differ depending on who is telling it to you, my hometown of Bedford was first inhabited by Europeans in 1616, making it one of the first places to be visited in America. But the general consensus is the load-bearing beam I will include. Thank you for letting me ramble. Now, for your story. I was born and raised in the city of Bedford, Maine. The city itself is full of somewhat garbage people, but I wouldn't have wanted to grow up anywhere else. I had many wonderful memories, as the beach was an hour walk away, the backyard was sprawling, and the woods that led down to the river was right next to my house. It runs about 135 miles from New Hampshire and splits the town of Bedford and Saco, emptying out into the ocean beyond. Most mothers, my own included, did everything in their power to make sure their children didn't go to the water until 3 people died at the beginning of the year. This may sound morbid, and indeed it is, but for good reason. All the children in the cul-de-sac knew bits and pieces of information, usually clashing, but I first heard the full story told by an old man named Rodney. Rodney was an old Native American man who lived down the other side of my backyard. His grandson Josh and I would often play games with each other and became pretty good friends. Rodney was a good-spirited man, always telling us fun stories about the people from his lineage, and usually scary ones, when we would put the tent up out back and camp out for the night. It was one such night I heard the curse of the Saco River. Back in the year 1675, Winter Harbor, now known as Bedford, was well established by the Europeans. The local Saco natives generally welcomed them, and boats would come and go along the Saco River. One such boat carried 3 white men, who were said to be drunk as a skunk, and meaner than one too. A woman who had given birth to the chief's son was upon one of the islands, carrying the child in tow. They decided to have a little fun, and test out a story they once heard. It was said that Native Americans could doggy paddle from birth, and they would find out, most likely making a few bets on it. Despite the woman's screams, they ripped the baby from her arms and threw him into the water. Unsurprisingly, the child had drowned. Some say she went in after him, only to drown herself. Others, not. What eventually did happen is Chief Squadron, not to be confused with Squanto, found out and placed a curse on the river. Until the day white man cleared the banks, the spirits of the river would take 3 lives a year. Some say the 3 were killed right there, but regardless, there are no delegations made. In fact, it was said to ignite violence between the tribes and the Europeans, kicking off the War of King Philip. There was a little more to it than that, I'm sure, but it's been about 26 years now, so my memory is a tad bit fuzzy. The one thing I can never forget In fact, it's probably what caused my terrible, lifelong nightmare, is the night he took us out fishing. Conveniently enough, Rodney took us by canoe out to Skeleton Dam. It's a popular place for fishing and swimming. In late summer, the sun is warm while being shaded by the large forest around it, and the sun goes down. The sounds of wildlife makes it an unparalleled place to relax. He paddled us downstream for about an hour when finally the night came on. We didn't catch a whole lot, and honestly, at 7 years old, I hardly knew what I was doing, but I had fun with Josh, and Rodney was telling us more of his stories of the past. I don't know what time it was, probably 10 or 11, but fog began rolling across the water. Rodney made a crack about the spirits making their way from the depth when all the noise from the bank stopped. There was no insects, birds, or frogs to be heard, just a quiet sloshing of water and wood. I don't think we even noticed at first, not until I could see the dead serious look on old Rodney's face. He didn't say it, but he was scared. He'd said something to the effect of, "We better pack it in." So we reeled in our fishing poles, and he started a long trip back up the river. Being children, Josh and I didn't really panic. Rodney was experienced in the woods, and though he stayed silent, he didn't much let on that something was wrong. He just kept his eyes forward and worked the oars. This went on for a while. The sounds in nature were still silent, and it seemed as though every small sound from outside of the river to the other. The fog was still present and was growing thicker by the minute. I don't know how Rodney didn't get lost, but I assume it wasn't his first time in conditions such as these. The closer we got, the more we all let go of our fear. That is, until the crying began. I couldn't tell from where, but like a gunshot out of the silence, the shrill, high-pitched sobbing rang out from the land. It'd be so loud, like it was right next to you, then seemed to move away, only to return just as quickly. To make it worse, the sobbing would erupt into an insane burst of laughter. Even thinking about it now makes me shiver. Not a male or female, it was something I can't possibly find words to match with. As it continued, we started to hear the sounds of something jumping through the forest, easily keeping pace with the boat. I tried to block most of it out, but that's not something that ever goes away. I believe that was about the time Josh and I began to cry ourselves. Rodney tried to comfort us, telling us to keep our heads down and to cover our ears. But most of his efforts were spent rowing in a panic-driven manner. The tone of his voice was quick and stern, nothing like the tight look on his face, and I believe he was praying. The sob crying stopped after a bit to our relief. However, it was short-lived. A woman's voice shot out from somewhere, distant but also close. In a blood-freezing tone, it screamed, "Help me!" I looked out through the fog. It wasn't a woman I saw. However, on the bank to the right, I can make out a thin figure. Not too many details were visible, alongside from the long horns that sprouted from its head like that of a deer. The image quickly melted back into the fog and disappeared. Once again, "Help me, please!" came from the bank. The opposite one, however, the one closest to us. As this happened, the sound of drums came and quickly crescendoed their way all around us, like that of a dozen or more people playing drums. Rodney told us once again not to look, and steered the canoe away towards the center of the river. Like the idiot kid I was, I looked as the green orbs of light began to appear, along with multiple little men. I say men, but they were all much too short, and the shape wasn't quite right. It was almost like a group of monkeys. We're all lined up along the shore, just staring at us. As the ghastly cry for help continued to follow, switching sides from time to time, I felt certain I had wet my pants by then. I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life, including my current age. Unfortunately, our boat trip through hell wasn't quite over yet. The fog was a constant and would swallow everything almost as quick as it appeared. As terrifying as the things on the bank were, at least they couldn't get to us, or so I thought. We must have been pretty close to the boat launch by that point, but before we could get there, the sounds of splashing erupted on all sides of us. The occasional slosh of water told us there was something around our boat, and it wasn't long till the knocking began. It was soft at first, more like something was rubbing the sides of the canoe. Then it turned into scratching, then quickly got louder, as if people were pounding their fists against the sides. It got so bad, I thought we were going to tip, and poor old Rodney was roaring like a madman, the panic on his face as clear as day. He was no longer trying to be silent, and I could even see something trying to grab and pull out the oars. These sort of short black arms that grabbed at whatever they could. We finally made it to the boat launch, Rodney practically throwing us on land. He didn't bother with our bags or our fishing stuff either. I was somewhat upset the next day, but I couldn't blame him one bit. We ran to his truck, still hearing drums beat all around us, now coupled with the sound of loud growls. I can't tell you what for sure, but some sort of animal was pacing around the fog on all fours. They kept their distance, thank God. But before we were fully on the road, we were in for one more surprise. The branches and leaves of the trees on the left of the truck began shifting. The forest here is thick, so it was hard to see what it was, but some sort of large bird burst through the canopy and shot across the lake. I've never seen anything so monstrously huge in my life. Rodney later told me he believed it was a thunderbird. I'm not sure, but the wingspan was anywhere from 20 to 30 feet long. Since that night, I've stayed away from the river. In fact, I've moved halfway across the country. I can't really tell you a whole lot else from that night. I never got many answers myself. I can tell you, however, that I believe in the curse of the Saco River wholeheartedly, as well as its spirits. Do not go into that river, unless of course 3 people had already been found dead. Tonight's story was The Curse of Saco River, written by Cryptic Wanderer. If you enjoyed this story, chances are you'll enjoy his other content. The links to all his other stuff will be in the description below. Hey, did you know I have merch? Yeah, it's crazy, right? But I do. And if you would like to walk around representing my realm and gaining immediate travelers, the links to my merch store will be in the description below. As always, I would like to say a special thank you to my lovely Patreons. 242 Reads, Rando Calrissian, Seraphine the Midnight Bard, Creepy Clown Girl, Mia Mina, Philia Noctis, Hair Raising Narratives, Bookie Boo Scary Storytime, Lycan Trucker, and Nathaniel Nelson. If you'd like to join these lovely travelers by the light of my fire, you can do so by becoming a Patreon as well. The support is always appreciated, but never expected. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you're new, and ding that bell for all future content, as it will really help push this channel into the algorithm.
But as always, travelers, once you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.